Hey, welcome back to Mental Health and Murder. And today in episode 2, we are unfortunately going to be talking about and reviewing the unfortunate case of 10-year-old Iliana Peters. So before we get into the case, quick disclaimer, I am coming with the perspective of a psychotherapist who also has background in the biology of the brain. My overall goal is to come to you not just to share the details of these different cases, but to talk about the why, to give insight into why someone may have done what it is that they did. If you're anything like me and you are obsessed with crime as well as understanding human beings, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and also don't forget to share. Okay, so Iliana Peter, who actually went by Lily Peter, her shortened name was Lily, is a 10-year-old girl who was found dead on the morning of April 25th of 2022. So this is a recent case. Lily, who is from Chippewa County, and I hope I'm spelling that correctly, Chippewa County in the state of Wisconsin, again, was found dead not too far from her aunt's house where she had gone missing. Her body was also found by someone who actually knows her. Before we get into exactly what happened to Lily, I just want to also add that most of the time the victim knows or is at least somewhat familiar with their abuser, their attacker, or their murderer. And in Lily's case, that was no different. So on the day that Lily disappeared, she was on her bicycle, and it was said that she was wearing a pink and purple hoodie. Perfect for a 10-year-old, right? So she's wearing this pink and purple hoodie. She is outside of her aunt's house. She's riding around on her bike. And then up comes this 14-year-old boy. And because he's a minor, his name was never released. I do believe that they released his initials, but his full name was never released. So for today's purposes, we're going to call him O. Again, Lily was familiar with this young boy. So upon coming across her, he decided to, and I don't know if he had to work really hard to convince her, but he suggested that they go by the nearby trail, and behind those trails are woods. But he convinced her to go over there, that they should just go kind of hang out and play. And because Lily is familiar with him, she agreed. Earlier I said that her body was found on the 25th. So these details that I'm now sharing with you all occurred the day before on the 24th. So unfortunately, Lily's body was actually deceased on the 24th, and then she was found about 24 hours later. Again, not too far from the crime scene. So they're on their way to the trail. She's on her bike. She's in this pink and purple hoodie. We don't know what he's wearing, but we do know that there was an eyewitness who actually, after Lily's face was put on the news, ended up going on that website Reddit to say that he thinks he knows who may have hurt her, because he saw Lily on her bike along with this 14-year-old boy, and that was the last person that this individual saw Lily with as they were heading towards the trail. If I can add, I know that Lily saying yes was very innocent to hanging out with this young boy. They just wanted to play. That's what 10-year-olds do. But I know for myself, as a human being, but really as a mother, I'm already worried about my kids playing in desolate areas. I would be worried about my child playing off in any woods without me being physically present, because we know that anything can happen, and not necessarily that they'd be kidnapped or that they'd be murdered, but they could get hurt. In those types of areas, no one may hear them screaming, no one may hear them crying, and that within itself is scary. So continuing on, both Lily and O are at the park. They're in this trail and they're playing. O, Lily's murderer, her attacker, punched her in the stomach. And as she's hovering over, he decides that he's going to take it a step further. As Lily is holding her stomach, and she is like probably thinking, what's going on here? And I'm sure she's thinking, where's my mommy, or where's my auntie, or whoever, where's my dad, who actually is the one who, I didn't say this earlier, but it was her father who called police to actually, say that she was missing. So I'm sure at this time she's hunched over holding her belly, and she probably just wants whoever her safe person is. But unfortunately, O doesn't stop there. At that point, he decides to pick up a stick, and he confessed to hitting Lily a total of 3 times until she fell to the ground. And unfortunately, he keeps going. I know at this moment, Lily is deathly scared. And what O ends up doing next is Kind of hard to imagine, but it does happen, as we know. He decides to strangle Lily until she is deceased. Now Lily is deceased and O attempts to have sex with her corpse. He also bit her, and the coroner who completed the autopsy did confirm that Lily's rear was covered in bite marks. Now, be reminded, he is the one confessing all of this during the police interrogation and interview. And in fact, based on my research, it actually didn't take much. He was pretty willing to share and offer up exactly what happened. Now, after doing all of this to Lily, 14-year-old O says he got scared. What does he do? He runs home, he takes off all of his clothes, he throws them in the hamper, and then he goes about his day like nothing happened. And then fast forward to now, Lily's face is showing up on the TV as a missing child. He gets scared again, and this time he decides to go back to the crime scene where he left Lily's body. He drags her, he covers her with some leaves, and his 14-year-old mind that's immature, he's thinking that he probably has done a great job of hiding her body. Her body was discovered the next day on April 25th. Even though O is only 14, I do believe that he was tried as an adult, and that's because of the nature of the crime. He was charged with first-degree sexual assault as well as first-degree intentional homicide. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking and wondering, he's 14, is this premeditated? Why? Well, according to O, during his interrogation, he confessed that this absolutely was premeditated. He said that he had every intention of beating Lily. He also had every intention of raping her. Why does a 14-year-old, how does a 14-year-old get to a place of intentionally wanting to harm another child, especially in this manner? We don't know enough about O's background. In fact, we don't really know anything at all other than the fact that Lily was familiar with him. What we can speculate pretty fairly is that he was probably exposed to a lot of unhealthy types of interactions, and that could look like he was exposed to porn very early. He may have been exposed to domestic violence. He may have been exposed to violent content in movies, on TV, in video games. I do want to note that although it happens, children killing other children is actually rare. Crimes committed by children tend to be what we consider juvenile delinquency, right? So stealing cars, arson, petty theft, stealing, defacing buildings, things like that is what we're more familiar with. But unfortunately, there are cases where children kill other children, teens kill other teens. We do know that children who have committed such crimes 100% struggle with impulse control. And we often have found as well that they hurt animals, and that's typically where it starts. So they start with hurting animals before they move on to another human. Children who commit these kinds of crimes typically also grow up in homes where they were neglected, again, where they witnessed abuse or they were abused themselves. And I will always say that none of these things are validation for why anyone, no matter the age, will hurt another person, again, especially in this type of manner. But what it does do is it gives us insight into how someone as young as O, being 14 years old, would rape, would murder, would want to rape, would want to murder, would decide to do something like this. It's also important to consider that although we don't know if O had an underlying mental health condition, in my research I did not find that he was clinically assessed by a mental health professional. It's also possible that whoever his caregivers were, whether it's biological parents or extended family, suffered from some sort of mental illness, and he either was the brunt of the symptoms or he observed, very unhealthy ways of living, and unfortunately, he had some learned behaviors. It's also important to note that these children are often also pretty intelligent. And it might be one of the reasons that they actually have a good job manipulating their victim or coaxing their victim into getting them to the place that they want them to be. But these children tend to be quite intelligent. And to expound on some other reasons why, outside of being raised in a very unhealthy home, Kids who kill other kids, sometimes it's for revenge. So remember, our prefrontal cortex is still developing. Children of that age are not mature. They haven't had certain life experiences to understand the best and most effective way to engage in conflict resolution. And so for a lot of children, especially a troubled child or a child who has a mental health illness, whether it has been discovered or undiscovered, when they want revenge, they're going for it. When there's no impulse control and you have been bullied, you're going for it. At that age, I think most of us can contest to the fact that at some point as your brain is developing, there sometimes is a struggle between reality and fiction, especially if you read all kinds of books. Again, especially if you're exposed to a lot of unhealthy content like violent crimes. When a child has impulse control issues, if a child is suffering from depression and that child is being bullied, that line becomes very gray. You start to believe that fiction is your reality, or that fiction can be your reality, and that you can get away with certain heinous crimes. I should caution that there isn't one type of child killer. Though they may show similarities in their behaviors, there still can be some differences. So that is the case of Lily, or Iliana Peters, who was 10 years old, from the state of Wisconsin. The world has lost, another beautiful young girl who had all the potential in the world. A family, a community is now no longer with the Iliana that they knew. Thank you for tuning in. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Until next time.